Breaking tonight, just hours after the New York Times reported on two women who claim they were touched inappropriately by Donald Trump. We also learned of another woman who says she too was assaulted. In 2005, People magazine writer Natasha Stoynoff was sent to Trump's Florida estate to profile his first year of marriage with wife Melania. It was their anniversary. Melania was very pregnant. During the interview, Stoynoff was briefly left alone with the real estate mogul while Melania went upstairs to change her wardrobe. That's when, the reporter now claims, Trump abruptly pinned the reporter against a wall and started kissing her. Stoynoff writes, quote, "I wasn't in a locker room when he pushed me against a wall. I was in his home as a professional, and his beautiful pregnant wife was just upstairs." Those accusations are now being addressed by Trump, who adamantly denies the charges.
Why didn't they make it part of the story? I was one of the biggest stars on television with The Apprentice, and it would have been one of the biggest stories of the year. And by the way, the area was a public area, people all over the place. These people are horrible people. They're horrible, horrible liars. And interestingly, it happens to appear 26 days before our very important election. Isn't that amazing?
Joining me now, People magazine deputy editor J.D. Heyman. J.D., thanks for being here. So, Natasha Stoynoff writes this story now, coming out with her story. And first, let me ask you, did you know about this prior to her writing it?
Only very recently. I hadn't known it at the time. We didn't work together at the time. This was something she kept very private.
What made her want to write it now?
Well, as you said at the top of the hour, very clearly, the release of the tapes, the Bush tapes, the Access Hollywood conversation, and then what crystallized it for her was when Donald Trump responded to a question at the presidential debate and said that he had never touched or kissed a woman without her consent. And I think that made her very determined to tell her tale.
What about earlier in the campaign, J.D.? You know, his treatment of women has been an issue for a long time. Why didn't she come forward earlier?
Well, I think the reasons are the reason why any woman doesn't come forward. I mean, she has felt a great deal of shame, fear. She was not a public person in that way. She's not a political person. It bothered her. It increasingly did bother her. But until he actually said those words that we all heard on the tape, she thought that, you know, she might have been an isolated case. She doubted herself. Hearing that articulation of what he said was his behavior confirmed for her that this was, as she says, his modus operandi with women. And that was, I think, bizarrely a relief to her. And then when she heard him say, "No, I've never done this," that was, I think, in a way, a call for her to speak her truth.
She writes about it in the piece saying, "Like many women, I was ashamed and blamed myself for his transgression. I minimized it. It's not like he raped me. I doubted my recollection and my reaction. I was afraid that a famous, powerful, wealthy man could and would discredit and destroy me, especially if I got his coveted People feature killed." Today we heard from Trump on Natasha Stoynoff, who he knew fairly well. She'd been covering him, she says, for quite a bit when this happened. And this is what he said about her. Listen.
Take a look. You take a look. Look at her words. You tell me what you think. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Do you think that's a reference to her appearance?
I think it's hard to mistake what that's a reference to. And I would say to your guest at the top of the hour as to why women don't come forward, I think that's a pretty good illustration of why she felt she couldn't come forward.
Do you think she's going to come out and speak publicly on camera?
Listen, you know, I don't really know. I think this has been a very difficult journey for her. I think that she, you know, she is a journalist. She is a professional. She works very hard at her job. She had something happen to her that was very upsetting, and this is a new role for her. I don't think that she feels quite comfortable being exposed. I think if you asked anybody in that kind of position what that exposure feels like, it's not easy. And, you know, I just want to underscore, because this had been discussed earlier, she had no awareness. We had no awareness of other women's stories. There's no coordination with anyone. This is a person we worked with and we care for.
No one reached out to you from the Clinton campaign?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We're not a political magazine. We don't have an
Yeah,
ideology.
it's People magazine. You want to sell magazines. You don't want to pick a side in a presidential election. I understand that,
Well,
JB.
no, absolutely. And by the way, Mr. Trump has been covered pretty glowingly by big media for many, many years. So I think that's a strange thing to say. This was one person's story, and it was a story we thought was important to tell.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.